Hello and welcome to the News9 Plus show on the world's first news and current affairs OTT platform, News9 Plus. The Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, commonly known as Quad, just concluded a meeting in Delaware in the US and signed a wide range of agreements. The forum is a strategic security dialogue between India, Australia, Japan and the United States, which was formed in 2004 and resurrected in 2017. The Quad is not a security or a military grouping, but the group did come together this time to counter China's increasing footprint in Indo-Pacific region, as it poses a direct challenge to all members of the Quad nations. In this just concluded Quad meeting in the US, the official statement signed by all four leaders said that we are serious about concerns and the situation in East and South China Seas. The Quad leaders strongly opposed any destabilizing or unilateral actions that seek to change the status quo by force or coercion. A key outcome was a decision to have joint Coast Guards operation. The first ever Quad at Sea ship observer mission will be launched in 2025 to advance maritime safety and to continue with further missions to future across the Indo-Pacific. This Quad's declaration uses strongest language it has used so far against China's activities in the Indo-Pacific region without really mentioning China. So what does this all mean? Joining us to discuss the Quad and its takeaways is Ambassador Ashok Sajjanhar, former Indian diplomat. Also with us on the show is Dr. Tilak Jadhav. He's a China expert and associate professor at Bennett University. With us on the show is Prashant Pal Chri, US and foreign policy expert at Eurasia Group. I want to quickly come to you first. Ashok Sajjanhar, sir, thank you very much for taking time out. I think the first question first is, we see the Quad showcasing a wide range of agreements this time around, and from, curing of cervical cancer, where India pledged a substantial amount of money, to cooperation on cybersecurity front, to building a joint port in the Indo-Pacific region. Quad's achievement, it looks like, are finally coming to fruition. They are finally being seen.
No, absolutely. You're very right. You're very right also in what you say that, it really started as a security instrument, but then it has evolved into areas where it goes to provide benefits, advantages to the various countries in the Indo-Pacific. You would recall that when the first summit was organized in 2021, then the three items on the agenda were critical and emerging technologies, climate change, and the COVID-19 initiative, vaccines that were to be supplied. Since then, over the last three and a half years, the range and activities of the Quad have increased very significantly. And as you said, right now we have also put in place a Coast Guard initiative, so that in 2025 there will be the Coast Guard of all these four countries. Now, the benefit and the advantages that will accrue are not really only to the Quad countries, they are to all the Indo-Pacific nations, basically starting from the east coast of Africa to the west coast of America. So far, the focus has been the Pacific, but now it has been decided that the focus of the activities will also expand to the Indo part of the Indo-Pacific. So there are a large number of initiatives, whether it is in the area of climate change, it is in the area of supply chain resilience. You mentioned about the Cancer Moonshot initiative that has been taken, which is going to help, as it is mentioned, hundreds of thousands of women who suffer from cervical cancer. So across the board, there are initiatives in the area of infrastructure. You mentioned about ports. There's also in the area of connectivity. So across the board, basically, as Prime Minister Modi said in 2022, that the Quad is a force for global good. And that is what it seeks to do, and that is what it seeks to achieve by all the additional initiatives that it has taken at the Quad meeting yesterday.
All right. Let me quickly also get in Dr. Tilak Jha. Dr. Jha, as we were discussing, this is no more just symbolic. We're looking at effective delivery of vaccine. We're looking at partnerships, from technology partnerships to cybersecurity to joint port development. It does look like the narrative of Quad being symbolic in nature has also been countered effectively.
I think a few things which it does for sure is that it is trying to make Quad go beyond the security thing. I mean, in terms of being presented as an anti-China initiative, it is now being presented as a more acceptable, more wider sort of entity. At the same time, of course, we do see a statement on China, which is pretty harsher and possibly more assertive than at any point of time. So it is a declaration of the arrival of the Quad, not just as a security alliance, but it is a declaration of Quad as a real force for global good in terms of presenting an alternative for many more countries. It is also an effort towards expansion of Quad in a way, and of course, making it as an entity which more and more countries want to join. So we do see all of these things together. I think we also have to be mindful of the fact that four is always better than one. So when we see Belt and Road Initiative, it's an initiative which is dominated by one country, China. It is led by one country, China. And of course, Quad, here we have four. So whenever four people get together, it definitely presents itself as a much more holistic strategic posturing compared to some sort of domination by one entity. So I think we can put it all together to make sure that this is announcement of the arrival of the Quad in a new format.
Prashant Pal Chri is also joining us on the show. Prashant, I think it's an important conversation to have, because albeit we've talked about this forum not being anti-China, and they have very strategically maintained, including India, that India will not have a military sort of a partnership. This will not be an Asian NATO. We do have a Quad Coast Guard for the first time as a security measure. Do you think Quad is finally flexing its military muscle?
Well, let's understand what the Quad is about. It's an assessment by these four governments that China's dominance game is really about controlling strategic technology. That if I am the world leader in quantum computing, then cybersecurity is basically, I am the king of cybersecurity. If I am the head of green hydrogen, then automatically green energy in the future, somewhat like oil, will become I'll become preeminent in that sphere. So if you look at the Quad's internal mechanism, 28, I think, of the working group and sub-working group, 26 of them or 25 of them are technology. So this is a direct and aim at attempting to preempt, to stop China from becoming a dominant strategic technological player. That's one element. A lot of these technologies, though, also have dual use. Semiconductors, green shipping, maritime domain are also have military elements to this. So anyway, the Quad, even though, as you said, was not officially anti-Chinese, was clearly aiming itself at trying to stop Chinese dominance. The Coast Guard initiative, again, it helps, but it's part of a larger maritime push. If you look at what's happening on this summit in particular, on the port infrastructure, maritime awareness, Coast Guard initiative, a lot of maritime push, because dominance of the seas, making sure that China does not become the preeminent naval power in the Indo-Pacific is very much part of that story. But it's not just about warships. It's about who controls the ports and so on. And we're also seeing the same thing, I think, in this summit. We saw a lot of attempts to push the Global South agenda. We will provide Wi-Fi, we will provide ORAN telecom structures, green renewable energy projects in the South Pacific, in Africa, in the Indian Ocean, all designed ultimately to undermine China's bid to be a leader of the Global South. So you're seeing a lot of things that are happening there, which are fundamentally against China. You'll notice that there was a microphone, an open microphone leak after the Quad press conference, I think it was, where you hear the American officials briefing the other Quad leaders about China, and it's very hostile. It's about China being this and that. So you can tell that internally this is what the Quad is all about. It's about countering China, even though, as you said, officially it doesn't do so. My personal view is over the next 5 years, we will see the Quad become increasingly openly more military in its nation.
All right, Ambassador Sajjan, let me quickly refer back to what Pramit mentioned. He said there was an open hot mic where you could hear Joe Biden talking about how China is testing Quad members. Now, looking ahead, do you see India's role and stance changing with respect to what a Quad will be? Because India's been very clear. It said that it's the Quad as a forum is not against any one nation. But increasingly, what Pramit is alluding to, it does look like it's heading towards becoming more of a military forum as opposed to just a general global forum for economic participation as well as partnerships with like-minded countries.
Well, I would not really agree that it's becoming an obviously military forum, but definitely, the whole raison d'etre of the establishment of the Indo-Pacific and the Quad, which have an umbilical cord linking both of them to each other. That was basically the expansionist policies, the belligerent policies of China in South China Sea and the East China Sea. And that is why you would see that, we really started with an open, free, resilient, inclusive, prosperous Indo-Pacific. And we've been talking about freedom of navigation and freedom of overflights. Now, who is challenging freedom of navigation? It's China. Who is indulging in dangerous maneuvers in the South China Sea? It's China. Who is constructing these artificial islands and, engaging in such activities? It is China. So, I don't think that mentioning of the name China or not mentioning of the name is really able to delude anyone that what you are referring to. So definitely it is about China, whether it is red hot mic there or not. It has been clear right from the very beginning. But that it is becoming more military, I would not tend to agree, because basically the countries in the region, particularly if you're talking about South China Sea, ASEAN nations and others bordering it, basically they don't want the countries to, they don't want to take sides between the United States and China. China is still their largest investment partner. China is still their largest trading partner. China still, can engage in gunboat diplomacy. We have seen that against Philippines. We've seen that against Malaysia. We've seen that against other countries. So they are very wary and apprehensive of taking sides. So they would rather not take sides, but to engage them and provide them with more choices, more options as against the predatory practices of the Belt and Road Initiative. All these benefits and advantages in infrastructure, in connectivity, in cyber security, marine domain awareness, etc. Those are being provided to all these countries so that they will get more engaged and more attracted towards that, and their move towards China, that will tend to get more evened out and balanced out.
Pramit, I think we were coming back to the conversation around China, of course, being it is an elephant in the room, whether you acknowledge or don't acknowledge, whether it's caught on hot mic or it's caught being said explicitly. In this case, it was said explicitly and it was caught on the camera as well as on the mic. My question to you is, can Quad really take on China economically as well as militarily and economically, more importantly, because that's where you see a global debt situation that China has led a lot of countries into, specifically in Asia. What can Quad do economically to challenge China?
Well, I think we're already seeing good progress on some of the strategic technology. If you look at, as you mentioned, if you look at the bilateral agreements between the Quad members, many of which flow from the Quad meeting, it's important to realize the Quad often acts as a coordination body, but the actual implementation takes place at the bilateral level. For example, in semiconductors, you saw commitments from the United States to help develop India's semiconductor capacity, an agreement to develop a military chip that would be manufactured in India but sold to the militaries of the US and the space agencies of both countries. So you saw a lot of stuff happening in semiconductors. Yes, China is also racing, but China is still far behind on many of the elements of chips. And it's important to realize how important, though very quietly understated, Japan is. Japan produces the bulk of the materials for high-level semiconductor chips in the world, and nobody is able to cut that domination, including China. So if you throw all of that in, if you look at what we're doing in semiconductors, for example, in the bilateral and so on, we would have done more. Unfortunately, this summit was had to be done in a slightly hurried manner because it was tied to Biden's departure. But you'll notice that they said that we will look forward to a memorandum of understanding on semiconductors supply chain because they didn't have time to complete it. But we'll see that in the next summit, which India will host, manifest itself in much more concrete fashion. We also saw an agreement to do the same thing in green technology on solar modules, on batteries, and so on. We will see a bunch of initiatives on that front. Again, supply chain, develop supply chains that are fundamentally independent of China, break Chinese domination. So one by one, these things are starting to take place. Pharmaceuticals as well, because again, China controls the advanced pharmaceutical products that go in there. And we again want to produce stuff that's independent of China. These take time to put together, and they're fundamentally the private sector has to come on board as well. This is just what the governments can do. But we're starting to see that happen. The debt story is slightly more complicated, but luckily China itself is pulling back. It's realized that what it does in the Belt and Road Initiative in terms of debt is producing unsustainably even for them. And so we'll see that change. But you saw the port, as I mentioned, the port infrastructure development, making it more sustainable. We saw the Development Finance Corporation of America committing to building projects in India, elsewhere. We're seeing a remarkable number of projects in green energy and the telecom area in the South Pacific and the islands in the Indian Ocean, all being financed by Quad countries. All of these are fundamentally designed to undermine Chinese attempts to dominate infrastructure, digital infrastructure in those areas, anyway, the next battleground. So we're seeing it chipping away bit by bit. An important thing to keep in mind is a lot more third countries are now coming to the Quad quietly and saying, can we align with you? I think South Korea in particular, top of the mind on that front, coming in and saying, we wouldn't mind aligning our policies with the Quad. I've heard even some European countries have come and said the same thing.
A lot of critics of Quad so far have continuously maintained that it does look like this is more of an informal forum. But do you think the informal nature of the forum is actually its strength because it's more flexible and the goals are more long-term?
You know, in the initial stages, I would say it definitely is a strength or was a strength. But I think as the agenda is expanding and as I can see that the acceptability of the Quad is also growing, particularly as far as the ASEAN is concerned. So maybe we need to have a little more structure introduced, and that I think the Quad countries will have to start looking at it. Now, you know, there are 6 summits that have already been organized, and this was the 4th in-person summit. The next year it is going to be the 5th in-person summit by India. So I think even as far as the institutional memories are concerned, because we see that 2 of the main leaders, important leaders, President Biden and Prime Minister Fumio Kishida, they will no longer be in position for the next summit. So I think a little bit of the institutionalization of this initiative, that would be required, that would be useful. Okay. And I'm sure the countries are giving thought to this and also trying to decide how to take this forward.
Do you think a formalization is on the cards? Now that Prime Minister Modi is back in power for the 3rd consecutive time, he is very kicked about what Quad can accomplish. India has pledged a substantial sum of money towards cervical cancer and other long-term goals, including climate financing and sustainable development. Do you believe a formalization of Quad as a group is on cards?
You know, we haven't heard anything to that effect so far being mentioned in the formal or official meetings. But I would imagine that this is what people would be thinking about, because it becomes, you know, if you want to make it more effective? It becomes rather cumbersome. And how do you take it forward from there? Of course, we have, in terms of the G20, that is also a forum. But there you have the Troika that is working. So, there is a bit of a continuity that you can see that is taking place from one summit to the other. But here, there is none. And I think what we see also is that the Quad has evolved in a remarkable way. 6 summits, 2 of them virtual, 4 in person over a period of about 3+ years. I don't think any other plurilateral body or international body has had that sort of a successful track record. So I think definitely there is a need for collating all that has happened. There have been 8 meetings of the foreign ministers. There is now also on the card meeting of the commerce and trade ministers. So, the agenda is expanding, and to bring it all together, I think we definitely need some sort of a secretarial, assistance support system. So hopefully, either under India's presidency, and, Prime Minister Modi is very focused on this, and that is why I think we gave up our opportunity to host the summit to the United States. And when we do it next year, maybe we will be able to launch some sort of a secretarial move from our side.
All right, Ambassador Sajjan Har, thank you very much, sir, for taking time out, for joining us here on News9 Plus. Also, Dr. Tilak Jha, as well as Prashant Pal Chri. Gentlemen, thank you very much for taking time out to be with us this evening. Just short of 1 year after October 7 Hamas terror attack on Israel, one of the biggest exchanges of fire between Israel and Lebanon-based Hezbollah took place this Sunday. Employing around 100 warplanes, Israel struck around 40 Hezbollah sites, and the terrorist group also fired hundreds of rockets at Israel. Now, this has upped the immediate risk of a full-scale war in the Middle East. Hezbollah Deputy Chief Nassim Qasem has said that we have entered a new phase, the title of which is the open-ended battle of reckoning. Now, Hezbollah's Iran's proxy. There are also fears of an Iranian attack on Israel and the subsequent retaliation. Could this lead to an escalation and an escalatory spiral? We are discussing that. Joining me in this discussion is Major General Sanjay Meston, defense and geopolitical expert. Lev Aran, an Israeli columnist and journalist live from Israel. Also with me in the studio is my colleague Deepak Badhana. Deepak, I want to come to you first. I think this is an important conversation. We are just nearing 1 year anniversary of that October 7 attack. It does look like at this point in time that Middle East is burning and this war could escalate.
No doubt about it. And in fact, let's look at how things stand today. Out of the hostages that were taken away, about 100 are still unaccounted for. Then we seem to be seeing a spiral, of escalation, wherein one move prompts another one to make something else. So today we are seeing Hezbollah firing, say, 100 rockets. You can rest assured that the Houthis down south may start doing something again. This thing is best summed up by the UN representative to Lebanon, who's stated, that the region is on the brink of an imminent catastrophe.
All right. Is the region on the brink of a catastrophe? Let's talk about that. Major General Sanjay, sir, I think it's important to understand that this and the developments in the Middle East with respect to Hezbollah firing rockets has been an ongoing one. It hasn't really led other Middle Eastern countries to participate. Does it look like to you at this point in time, with Hezbollah launching an all-out attack on Israel and Israel trying to defend its territories, that finally other countries who were sitting ducks so far would finally participate? And if they were to participate, this will become a large-scale war.
My take is as follows. Firstly, the situation on ground is extremely complex and it is extremely difficult to predict by anyone how things will unfold. But seeing things on ground, I would like to highlight some ground factors. Firstly, any army, I would put it the Israeli army, generally most of the armies like to fight a one-front war and contain the other front. And throughout, right from 7th October, I think Israel was doing exactly this. They were fighting the Gaza and containing other fronts, whether it is West Bank, whether it is Hezbollah, whether it is Syria, Iraq, or whether it is Houthi. So they were containing them, and these so-called other entities were occasionally firing rockets, oblique missiles on Israeli territory. Aim being to just keep it below at a particular threshold level. Now, in between, some major developments have happened with these other entities. In Iran, Ismail Hania was assassinated. Iran has till date not reacted. Two of the major military commanders, Atik and Shukra were eliminated. And also in the Houthi territory, Yemen, there have been viable attacks by Israel. So, and of course, yes, the biggest attack has been the mobile phones, that is the walkie-talkies, and of course the pagers. This has been a well-coordinated attack, and this has actually now set the things rolling. Now, what is Israel doing? Israel today has now shifted its center of gravity towards Lebanon, that is the northern north part of its territory, and its focus is on the southern Lebanon. Now they will contain Hamas. The situation now gets reversed. I would ask a question, or I would state, what will be the reaction of Iran and others? I personally feel there is a window of opportunity which Israel is exploiting. One, the US elections. Number two window is that they understand the relationship, a complex relationship between the Hezbollah and Lebanese armed forces. It's a very complex relationship, including with the Lebanese government. And the fact of the matter is that today, after these pager attacks and walkie-talkie attacks, I think I would state Israeli Mossad and military intelligence has effectively, I'm using the word effectively, infiltrated into Lebanon, in Hezbollah, and in Iran, Syria, and Iraq. Therefore, there is a lot of fear amongst all these entities who is their betrayer, who can be sorting them out, and the common people have also got a lot of fear with all gadgets in their house. So considering all this, whether it will escalate, I personally feel the command and control infrastructure, command and control, when I say, 3,000 people have been decapacitated after this pager attack and walkie-talkies attack. They are the ones who are basically commanders at all levels. They have been incapacitated. They are not functional. And also Israel has today infiltrated into the Radio Lebanon and stated that the locals, civilians, should get away from all the areas, oblique locations of Hezbollah, and thereafter they will not wait for anything, even because they are warned.
Okay.
So there are reports that missiles, rockets are being fired even from built-up areas, from buildings. So now be targeted. So what is the reaction going to be from Hezbollah? That is the question you have asked.
Okay.
I feel the reaction would be there, but what kind of reaction and how much effective it will be, that is the question. And I personally feel it will not be very effective, because the Iron Dome system, you have seen 100-odd rockets were fired in Haifa. The Israeli guests will be able to tell what kind of damage has been done in Haifa. But I seem it must be minimal. Otherwise, it would have been a very big news in Israel and the international media.
Right.
So whether the other countries join in, I think it is wait and watch. Probably is Israel will now, their aim is to make a buffer zone, an enlarged buffer zone in the northern parts of Israel, basically between southern Lebanon, so that its territories are protected. And you remember, Prime Minister Netanyahu had given a very clear-cut aim. We are going to move 60,000 of the inhabitants who were displaced back to the northern areas of Israeli territory.
All right.
So I think, yeah.
Right. Major General, I'll come back to you. Let me also quickly get in Lev Aran, who's been waiting. He's joining us live from Israel. Lev, at this point in time, there is no clear acceptance from either Mossad or Israeli government that the pager attacks, the walkie-talkie attacks that rendered about 3,000 Hezbollah operatives incapacitated was in fact carried out by Israel. does there need to be an acceptance at all? I think we're all assuming at this point in time, and it's beyond assumption that it was Israel, in fact, involved in this sort of an attack. And if that's the nature of the game, we're looking at a new warfare altogether.
First of all, thank you for inviting me. Yes, I think it is like an open discourse in Israel. It was something that we did. I don't think that anybody is toying with the idea that some kind of an NGO or a business or a different country did this. It is like crystal clear that Israel did it, and Israel is, smart enough not to confess, because the demerits are larger than the merits. And I also think that maybe we should blow the lid of what exactly Hezbollah and Israel are fighting about right now. And I'm speaking now from Haifa. In front of my office, it is the new Adani port. I think that war now is about the rules of the game, because Israel tells Hezbollah, why are you mixing up with the Gaza war? It is like none of your business. We had a war with Hamas and we should have one front war. While Hezbollah believes that it has a solidarity with Gaza, and as long as Israel and Hamas have a war in Gaza, also Hezbollah has the obligation to have at least a small fight, a small feud with Israel. So now the war is it's not an ethnic war. It is not a territorial war, because Israel left each and every inch of Lebanese territory more than 2 decades ago. It is a war about the rules of the game now and in the future.
Okay, it's a war about the rules of the game. That's the message there, word there coming in. Major General, I want to come back to you, sir. What are the broader geopolitical ramifications? You were talking about how Israel is trying to assert its position on Lebanon once again, that this is not your war, asking Hezbollah to stay away from the war as much as they can. What are the broader geopolitical ramifications of the recent escalations?
Yeah, the broader geopolitical ramifications, I feel, is that the major players, of course, Iran, United States, etc. Iran is effectively using its proxies, and it is like very happy that the fighting of Iran is being done by the proxies. And Iran has got no love lost for these proxies. Let them be, I would say they are a cannon fodder for the Iranians. Iran will not get directly embroiled in this war. It knows the consequences, because then the US, naval presence, the air presence, etc., will increase in the both the Red Sea and the Persian Gulf and everywhere in the Mediterranean, and they'll be attacked. Similarly, Lebanon knows. See, the people of Lebanon, the common people, are actually, not. I would say they don't like Hezbollah. Reason being, because Hezbollah has come to their country in the form of these so-called revolutionary or resistance force. The common people is actually suffering. Just about 4 or 5 decades back, Lebanon was one of the most beautiful tourist spots in the world. So today the economy, etc., is being totally impacted. But I personally feel the geopolitical ramifications so far is that my feeling is, many may not agree, it is going to be limited now between Israel and Hezbollah. Some kind of firing from Syria and Iraq will take place by these proxies of Iran, and maybe even Houthis will try that. The Gaza Strip will be contained, and Netanyahu would definitely be looking for control of the Philadelphia corridor, because that is where the smuggling takes place through the tunnels from Egypt. So rest of the countries are again doing wait and watch. I personally feel it will not escalate. Yes, the rocket exchange, firing and everything will continue. Now I'm looking for another escalation. Very soon, Israel has warned, and it is announced also that civilians should leave. I think now wherever built up areas are there, buildings are going to be there. Wherever there is some intelligence of rockets, oblique missiles based there, I think those buildings will be taken care of. So this is going to be restricted between Israel and, of course, Hezbollah. I personally feel it will not spiral out of control. the Western powers and even Iran does not want so, because Iran knows the consequences will be very grave. And Iran itself is facing a lot of internal problems. After all, Ismail Hania, how was he killed? He was killed in the heart of the capital of the country, and so close to that swearing-in site. I think this shows that Israelis have effectively infiltrated the entire setup. So they are actually scared. And today I was hearing the Russian TV where it says that some of the Israeli trained people have been arrested in Iran, about 14 of them. Of course, that would be a propaganda. But the fact of the matter is that there has been effective infiltration, and therefore there is some kind of a psychological fear
Right.
in all these countries.
There is a psychological fear. Deepak, let's talk about cost to human life, because that's something which has been an underlying discussion all this while. Whether we talk about war on Gaza or Israel's war against Hamas, or we talk about what's happening in northern Israel or southern Lebanon, there is a cost to human life. Not just the economic cost, where people are not able to get the sort of employment they need, their daily lives are interrupted and disrupted. There is an actual cost to human life with the number of people who are displaced and likely killed.
Let's just look at the numbers, and they speak for themselves. In Gaza alone, as many as 40 to 50,000 people are dead. Not to mention the thousands of people who've died in Israel. There were the initial 1,100 or so people, and the ones who've been injured in the attacks that have happened ever since. Beyond just Lebanon, Gaza and Israel, let's look at the region in itself. What you're seeing is that the generations that are going through this will be scarred for decades to come. For a long time, people have said that this part of the world has generally been violent. But today's happenings aren't making things any better. What is happening today will reverberate here and beyond for decades to come.
Absolutely. It will be a reckoning, I believe, for the future generations as to what could have been done right. But Levaran, what is Israel's position right now as far as a peace proposal is concerned? We know that the US has tried to mitigate peace. We know that a lot of Western countries have tried to mitigate peace. Where does Israel stand on a peace proposal, not with respect to Hezbollah, but at least with respect to what's happening in Gaza right now?
Okay, so first of all, we need to mention that there are rumors that even the leader of Hamas is dead by now, and this is one reason why he's not responding to American offers about hostages. So again, we don't know it, and Hamas is like super secretive. But I don't believe that right now we really have a front in Gaza. This is the reason why our best units are now in the Lebanese border and not in Gaza itself. The second thing is that I dare say that Israel assertive attacks on Hezbollah right now, they betray the fact that Israel believes that the best officers of Hezbollah are no longer with us, and that Hezbollah right now cannot even say who are the officers who are loyal to Hezbollah and who are the officers who are like Israeli agents. Because after what happened during the last week, Hezbollah lost the ability to know whom they can trust. And I think also the general mentioned this. As far as Gaza is concerned, we see that the death toll is becoming graver and graver every day, but still it is not that Hamas really has the ability or the army right now to defend Gaza. No way.
Okay, and Levaran, I think it's also an important conversation with respect to the double threat that you're facing as the army is redeployed to northern part of Israel. It does look like with Hezbollah's presence as well as Hamas's presence, a two-frontal war will be fought by Israel right now.
So this is the point. I think that during the last fortnight, the army came to the conclusion that in Gaza it is not a front anymore. We still have soldiers there. We still have many problems there, but a majority of Hamas terrorists are no longer with us. They are injured or dead or ran away. And while Hezbollah, during the last year, of course, also they lost lots of officers and soldiers, and we saw what happened with the pagers and with the walkie-talkies, but still Hezbollah is like a real army. Hezbollah is much stronger than the official Lebanese army. So, as far as the Israeli army is concerned, we do have a one-front war, even if some soldiers are in Gaza yet.
All right, and before I close this show, Major General, last word to you, sir. From my understanding of the conflict so far, there is a serious and a proper understanding that perhaps this conflict may not blow out of proportion because A, Iran has too many of its own problems to deal with, and Hezbollah has not been able to and will not be able to penetrate Israel at all. On the other hand, we see Mossad and Israel not just penetrating Hezbollah, its officials, but also successfully preventing any sort of attack on its own sovereignty through its own Iron Dome structure. Where does the war head from here on? 1 year since the war, do you see there is some peace in sight? Will there be some peace in sight, at least in the next couple of months to come?
Peace will take time, but I totally agree with Lebanon, and even I had mentioned Israel is now fighting a one-front war on Lebanon side. In the Gaza side, it is now doing something known as consolidation. Consolidation implying that now they will clear up the remnants and the last, I would say, people who are surviving, they'll be captured or they will be killed. So the major thrust now is definitely on Lebanon, and therefore you see the mechanized and the armored forces being redeployed towards the northern side. That is the northern Israeli side, and I think the war will now be totally one front here. And I highlighted earlier also, I don't see the others being involved. In the Hindi, I would say ki chut-put, sometimes small missiles, etc. The others will keep firing, but it's not going to make a major impact. And peace will take time. I think now there's a lot of pressure on Hamas to go in for peace talks. And I think Prime Minister Netanyahu is also very clear that his intent is to have a total control over the Philadelphia area so that tomorrow these things again do not resurface in Gaza. And reconstruction of Gaza will take a lot of time. So peace, perhaps sometimes, war end itself brings peace.
Absolutely.
I think the way Gaza has suffered, I think automatically now their stage is coming when they will give up. And the people of Gaza, the Palestinian people will start telling what have finally we achieved on 7th October. In fact, I would say Palestinians have lost so many lives. At what cost? Because at the cost of Hamas. This is no way to fight a war. You just capture people and just go and rape and mutilate babies. This is no way. So they have suffered. The people of Palestinian have suffered, and I think now there is going to be a realization even in the Lebanese people that they will also meet the same fate. So it is better to start giving away the locations about the Lebanese, the Hezbollah fighters.
Right.
So that's why the fight is not going to be easy for Hezbollah, and therefore it's going to be a one-front war. As on date, Israel seems to have a clear military edge.
All right, Major General, thank you very much, sir, for taking time out. Lebaran, as well as Deepak Badana. Gentlemen, thank you very much for taking time out. And we believe it's the people of Palestine who've suffered. And hopefully there'll be some peace in sight in next coming of months.